Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program, Ramadan for Better Health. Happy Ramadan to you and your families. We hope, inshallah, that you can have a very successful fasting month for this very important month for us. It's a great opportunity for us to do a number of things, and our hope here is that this program can help you to be successful in the area of the health and physical aspect of the fasting. Today's topic is jaundice. We're going to be talking about this. It's connected to breastfeeding. We're joined by Dr. Hisham Tawakkol. He is a clinical pediatrician and neonatologist, also the president of a non-government organization that provides free medical services. It's called ABCDE, the American Board of Certified Doctors in Egypt. Dr. Hisham, salam alaikum and welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and thank you very much for inviting me tonight.
Thank you for coming back. We really appreciated you opening up breastfeeding for the first time that you were here. And so we're going to continue with the issue, the subject of breastfeeding. And we want to talk about, the focus is on jaundice. First of all, can you talk about what is jaundice?
The definition of jaundice, actually, if you want to define jaundice, is the yellow discoloration of the skin and the mucous membrane. So when you find that skin is yellow and the mucous membrane, it's what's really lining our mouth, or you can see it also in the sclera, the white color of our eyes. If this skin or the white part of the sclera is really stained yellow, this is what we call jaundice.
Okay. Is there a certain chemical that causes this yellow color?
Sure. So that yellow color is coming from something called the bilirubin. The bilirubin comes from the products of the destruction of our red blood cells. So the red blood cells has certain element there called the hemoglobin, and then the hemoglobin, by certain reactions, it will be transferred in the body to bilirubin, and the bilirubin has that yellow color which goes to the skin and the soft tissues to cause the yellow discoloration and cause that jaundice.
Dr. Sham, does jaundice cause any pain or discomfort?
No, jaundice doesn't cause pain, and actually naturally in our body there is a continuous process of destruction of our RBCs. The RBCs has a lifespan, so we adults has a lifespan of 120 days. So the process of RBCs destruction is actually ongoing process. So the bilirubin actually is produced in our body consistently. That's why there is certain amount or certain level, small level of bilirubin naturally in everybody.
I see.
But the problem, if that bilirubin increase above certain limits, and that can happen usually in the newborns. It happen in the neonatal periods. If the bilirubin increase above certain limit, it doesn't cause pain, but above certain limit, it can go to the brain and cause bilirubin deposition in the brain, and it can damage the brain cells and leave the consequences for life.
Wow. So it's not something we should take lightly.
No, actually, jaundice is not something lightly, especially, as I said, in the context of a newborn, just after the baby is delivered, because there are many reasons and many causes that we maybe discuss later about why the baby have jaundice. But as I said, the jaundice, the bilirubin is not harmful by itself below certain limit, but once it exceeds certain limits, then it can cause consequences. Why? Because naturally the baby, the God make the baby, in his brain there is a defense mechanism to keep the bilirubin away from the brain. But if the bilirubin increase above certain limit, this defense mechanism that God create to keep the bilirubin away is going to be overwhelmed. So in that scenario, the bilirubin will cross this defense mechanism and go to the brain and cause damage.
I see. We had an illustration here. Can you talk about this? What are we looking at here?
So here, as we see, the baby is jaundice and has what we call kernicterus. So as a complication of the bilirubin, as I mentioned, as the bilirubin cross the defense mechanism that God is created to keep the bilirubin away from the brain, there are two things can happen there. One, the first thing we call acute bilirubin toxicity, and that's caused neurological problem in the baby and cause certain seizure and stuff like this. And the chronic phase, mean like few months after that damage occur in the neonatal period, the baby will stay for life by damage, and that damage what we call kernicterus, because the bilirubin element will be deposited in certain places on the brain and cause neurological damage for the rest of the life in that baby.
Doctor, we understand then that it's very important for us to catch this early. What kinds of things how common is it, and what kinds of things, aside from the yellow skin, should parents be looking for?
Well, by definition, as we said, the jaundice is a yellow discoloration of the skin and the sclera or the mucous membrane of the baby. So that's the sign that the mother can see. When she sees that the baby is yellow discoloration, as here we see in this picture, then she should seek medical advice. How common it is?
Yeah.
There are actually types of bilirubin or types of jaundice. So jaundice is very common. Why? Because there are certain types of jaundice. The first type we call physiologic jaundice.
Physiologic jaundice.
Physiologic mean it is natural, is normal, that this is a phase that all newborns will pass through it.
Okay.
And there is another type called pathologic jaundice, which just is be secondary to a disease. So as you see here, we have two types of jaundice. The first one called physiologic, and this is happening for any newborn will pass through this phase. And the second thing, or the second type, is pathologic jaundice. So it is very common because it is physiologic, it's natural. Every single baby will have certain amount of jaundice after few days after the delivery.
Doctor, we have a great many viewers from all parts of the world and from various ethnic and national backgrounds. All of us don't have the same skin color. And so for families who have very dark skin color, does it manifest? Would they focus their attention on the whites of the eyes? Is that going to be the indication for them?
Well, yes, this is a very important point you just mentioned right now. It might be harder to see jaundice in the black color, and the fairer the baby, actually the easy to find see jaundice. But still after certain limit, when the bilirubin increase, after certain limit, it's still going to be also seen even in dark skinned babies. It's going to be seen also in the skin.
Okay, and it would be such that the parents would know that something is not right.
Sure,
okay.
Sure. But since you raised this issue of ethnicity, Asian babies actually, they have higher risk of complication of jaundice more than the other races. And the reason for this, that usually our liver have certain enzymes that clear the jaundice from our blood. That type of enzyme in the liver in the Asian race is a little bit lazier than the other types in the other races. Enzyme.
Do you mean Far East Asia, like
yes, Far
China,
Eastern,
Japan,
exactly,
Korea?
Yeah. So this enzyme in the liver is not very active like the other races. So they have higher risk of complication of bilirubin than the other races.
All right, and we do have a great many. In fact, some of our largest, one of our largest audiences is in China.
Exactly.
All right, so we will continue the program. You talked about the different types. One is normal, you said, and the other is pathological. How do you differentiate between these two? Is it only done through chemical or clinical tests?
Okay, so let's say, what is the first thing that the mother should do when her baby have jaundice? So the recommendation here for her, once the baby have jaundice, is she has to seek medical advice. Why? Because for two reasons. The first reason, that she will not know if this jaundice is actually what we call physiologic jaundice or pathologic jaundice.
This is a great, I'm sorry, this is a great photograph here.
Exactly. So this is very clear here, that yellow discoloration of his skin. So this is a very great picture to show that this baby have the definition of the jaundice we just said, yellow discoloration of the skin and the mucous membrane.
Yeah, okay.
So the first advice we give to a mother when she sees that the baby have that yellow discoloration, that she has to seek medical advice. The two reasons here, that she's not going to be able to differentiate. This type of jaundice is a physiologic jaundice that is normal for every baby to have, or maybe it is the pathologic jaundice that we are talking about right now, secondary to a disease, and there are many diseases that we can talk about later that can cause pathologic jaundice. And the second reason, that actually even for doctors now, the recommendation that it is impossible or it's not recommended to evaluate the degree of jaundice based on the exam or the ear discoloration that we see in the skin. So even now the new recommendation, even for us doctors, that once we see that the baby has jaundice, that you have to have a test. You have to do bilirubin level in the blood to check how severe is this problem.
Is it customary for all babies to be tested for jaundice, or only at the request of the parents?
No, there is some what we call like high risk for babies to have higher level of bilirubin. So among these, for example, babies who are breastfed, we spoke before about breastfeeding. So breastfeeding by itself considered one of the risk factors that the baby might have high level of bilirubin. Also, if there is some what we call mismatching between the mother blood group and the baby blood group.
Yes.
In certain blood groups.
Okay, Dr. Sham, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We will come back for this answer. You're talking, Dr. Sham is talking to us about jaundice. When we come back from the break, he's going to talk to us about this pathological type of jaundice. We'll be back with him after a short break.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.
We all know that a person's iman increases and decreases, and the best way to increase your iman is through the Quran.
To contemplate, to reflect, to ponder over the verses of the Quran.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.
In this program, we will listen to the Quran first, and that should soften our hearts. And then once we get to know the meanings and contemplate over these meanings, then we can change by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
ولا يأتونك بمثل إلا جئناك بالحق وأحسن تفسيرا.
ولا يأتونك بمثل إلا جئناك بالحق وأحسن تفسيرا.
Join us this Ramadan for Quran Circle.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the program. Before the break, Dr. Hisham was talking about the difference between pathological and physiological jaundice. One was normal, and you were talking about the pathological.
Exactly. So just to remind the audiences the difference between the physiologic and the pathologic, we said. So the physiologic jaundice, it's what's occurred to all the newborn. All babies will pass through a phase that will have yellow discoloration.
Okay.
And that actually, the reason for this physiologic jaundice is the enzyme that we spoke about in the liver. This enzyme in the first few days of life is actually not very active. So it stays about a week to 10 days for this enzyme to reach full activity. That's why all newborns have some certain degree of jaundice.
I see.
And there is actually a rationale for this. And we'll go back to God and the beauty of creation of God. What is the reason that this enzyme is not active in the liver? The bilirubin, it acts as antioxidant. Antioxidants, that mean when we exposed to oxygen, we know now that the oxygen can cause a lot of damage to our tissues. Before the baby is delivered, the baby is still in utero, the baby in what we call low oxygen environment. The oxygen with the baby in utero is very low. Now you expose this baby all of a sudden from the low percentage of oxygen in utero to the outside life of high percentage of oxygen. This can cause damage because the oxygen can cause damage to the tissues. So God protect us against the disadvantage or the toxicity of this oxygen by keeping the bilirubin high, which act as antioxidants. So actually it is detoxify or naturalize the toxic effect of oxygen.
I see.
So see, God creation is really beautiful.
So do we have this bilirubin for the rest of our lives?
As I said, we have certain amount of bilirubin that actually should not exceed 1.5 or 2 milligram per deciliter in our blood.
Okay.
Per 100 ml. So this is what we call physiologic jaundice, and there are many reasons. Actually, this is not the only reason, but just to make it simple to the audiences, the main reason of physiologic jaundice is that liver enzyme is not very active, but there is many other reasons for this.
Okay.
One of them is if we just mention about the lifespan of the RBCs. We said the bilirubin is coming out of the destructions of the RBCs, and the lifespan of the RBCs in adults is 120 days, but in babies it's only 90 days. So that the RBC's destruction in babies is faster than adults. That's why the babies produce high bilirubin, because they have rapid RBC's destruction. And as I said, the reason to keep the bilirubin high in the first few days of life, so to protect us against the toxic effect of oxygen.
The oxygen.
This is the physiologic jaundice. If we come back to the pathologic jaundice, what are the causes of the pathologic jaundice, and how we differentiate the pathologic jaundice from the physiologic jaundice?
Okay.
As doctors, as we learn in the medical school, and during our training, there are factors or things that make us differentiate. How we differentiate between the physiologic jaundice and the pathologic jaundice, and this is not easy for the mother, as I said, to differentiate.
I see.
The most important thing is the timing of the occurrence of this jaundice. Physiologic jaundice will not happen in the first day after delivery. Physiologic jaundice usually occur in the second day of life. Then it can stay until maybe the third or the fourth day, and at the beginning of the fifth days of life, the level of bilirubin will go down, as I said, because this is the time of the liver enzyme really will be activated, and then the bilirubin level will go down. This is physiologic jaundice, so it does not happen in the first day of life, as opposed to the pathologic jaundice. Pathologic jaundice, which have many reasons, can actually happen in the first day of life, and the bilirubin can go to high level even in the first day of life. And it will not take the pattern I just described right now for the physiologic jaundice. It will not go only to 5 days, no. Sometimes it stays for days and days after the first week of life.
So it should be fairly easy to, what other, we want to talk about other ways that you investigate this and other red flags. You're talking about some of them now. And one important point is that after a certain number of days, the jaundice, the normal physiological jaundice should disappear.
Disappear, exactly. Okay, as I said, as a mother, if you are having your baby home, the red flag for you, it will be when the baby have jaundice, especially if that jaundice actually is getting darker yellow. It's increasing. So it was light and then it's getting dark. Again, another very important warning alarm for the mother, if the baby at home is jaundice and becomes irritable. Once the baby becomes agitated or irritable, that then it might be this process of deposition of that bilirubin in the brain is already starting maybe. That's really a very serious alarm for a mother. Mother should not wait, of course, to this phase. I mentioned before, the mother, once the baby has jaundice, you should seek medical advice, because there are many reasons for jaundice and many causes, and it's hard for her actually to know the cause, and hard for her also to know the level. When she brings the baby to us in the hospital or to the clinic, then there are ways to test the level of bilirubin. The most common and the most reliable is what we mentioned right now, that I have to take a blood sample, send it to the test to get the level of bilirubin. But recently, there are some devices being now reliable in the market that you can measure the bilirubin level in the blood by just putting this device on the forehead of the baby or in certain other places in the body. You can give you some estimate, rough estimate about the bilirubin level in the blood. But the exact one and the most reliable is the blood test.
Okay. All right. Can we talk about once it's determined that the child, the infant, does have this pathological jaundice, talk about the treatments?
the treatment will be varies according to the cause of this physiologic jaundice. There are many pathologic jaundice. I'm sorry. There are many reasons for the pathologic jaundice.
Yeah.
The most common one, as I mentioned maybe during the first break, the first part, is what we call mismatch between the mother blood and the baby blood. Means the mother have some antibodies against the baby blood RBCs. These antibodies will be passed to the baby and will cause destruction to the baby blood.
I see.
That's the common scenario of the common causes of pathologic jaundice. But there is also some types of what we call congenital anemias. Maybe what I mean by this, that the RBCs itself, the components or the composition of the RBCs has some deformity that make them liable to fast destruction because they are missing enzymes or because their shape is abnormal, that will make them really destruct fast. But again, how we treat this pathologic jaundice, the most important thing is to provide good hydration for this baby. So we have to provide good hydration and good fluids for this baby. Then we treat the baby with what we call phototherapy, and this has to be done, of course, in the hospital. So the baby will be under certain light, as we see here in the picture. The baby will be placed there, and the purpose of this light, that it will transfer the bilirubin in the skin to a certain another material that the baby can pass through his urine.
Is this a normal light or a special light?
That's a special type of light. It's called green or blue zone light.
Green or blue zone.
So the regular light, neon light that we use is actually not recommended to put the baby under this. This is a misconception actually for a lot of mothers. They put the baby under the regular white light we have, thinking that this will treat the jaundice. This is actually not work.
Okay.
It has to, the color of this has to be in the blue and green frequency. So there is certain bulb or certain lights to actually treat jaundice. This is what we call phototherapy.
What about can we have the photograph back? Brothers, can you put that back up for us? The baby's eyes were covered. Why did they cover the baby's eyes?
Once you put the baby under this light, the baby's skin have to be exposed to predispose the maximum amount of skin to this light, because the skin works on the bilirubin, the light works on the bilirubin in our skin. So the baby has to be only wearing maximum his diaper. And then we shield the eye because it's known that this light can cause some harm to the retina of that baby. That's why we shield the eye to protect the baby's eye from the harm of the phototherapy.
Now these aren't, in the markets we can buy red, green, blue bulbs. That's different from the green and blue here.
Of course. This is certain frequencies. This light have certain frequencies medically designed only for the babies who have jaundice to treat them by these frequencies.
So we can't go to the market and buy blue and think that's gonna, no.
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. So we talked about some of the treatments. Any other things you want to talk?
Of course. So this is the simple, actually, and as you said, this is a safe and simple way to treat jaundice and actually to prevent the bad consequences of the jaundice and in rising the bilirubin above the defense mechanism that got created, and then the bilirubin can go to the brain. As you see, this is very simple. It's just putting the baby under the light. Yes. The baby will be placed under the light maybe for 1 or 2 days, and that's it. That's the first line of treatment we use. But there is other things that we might do also to protect the baby. And this will be through blood exchange. We call it exchanged blood transfusion. What I mean by this, if the phototherapy does not work, and despite the phototherapy, the photolight, the baby is still destructing RBCs and still producing a lot of bilirubin, and the bilirubin is still rising, then in that scenario, or if the bilirubin in the beginning, when the baby just came to the hospital and the bilirubin is really very high, exceeding the capacity of the phototherapy to bring this bilirubin down, then what we call exchange blood transfusion here will be indicated. What I mean by this, we mean that I will calculate the blood volume of the baby, and then we'll exchange double the volume of the blood. Meaning, if the baby, usually the babies have blood volume of 80 ml per kilo. So if the baby is 3 kilograms, 80 ml per kilo, then the blood volume of that baby will be 240 ml per kilo. In this scenario, I will exchange by double volume. I will get 480 ml of blood from the blood bank, take the blood of the baby, and infuse instead of it the blood I'm getting from the blood bank. So I want to take the blood of this baby with the bilirubin in it, with high level of bilirubin, put new blood, does not have bilirubin, to dilute the bilirubin on this baby and preventing from exceeding the limit of that defense mechanism in the brain.
Doctor, we have run out of time. We've reached the end of the program, and you have given us a great introduction to understanding jaundice, the different types of jaundice, the treatments, the methods of evaluation. And so the point is that if the viewers have infants, they have an idea now of what they can do. So thank you so much, Dr. Hisham, for joining us to open up the subject of jaundice. This will conclude today's segment of Ramadan for Better Health. We were joined by Dr. Hisham Tawakkol. He is a pediatrician and a neonatologist, also the president of a medical organization and a non-government organization that provides free health services. It's called ABCDE, the American Board of Certified Doctors in Egypt. Thank you for tuning into the program. We'll be back, inshallah, with more health topics. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Oh.